A stranger reached for the $10 puppy, and a uniformed Navy SEAL stepped between them. The homeless seller stared at the sky and asked, "How many seats were left?" Luke bought the dog, then returned with food before the freeze. The man was gone, leaving 5 empty cups facing the road. Stay with us, because the smallest rescue may open a door everyone else forgot. The puppy was standing on a produce crate when the wind caught the cardboard sign and slapped it against the homeless man's knee. Puppy, $10. Good home. The last 2 words had been pressed into the cardboard so hard that the marker had torn through in places. The man caught the sign before it escaped beneath a vegetable truck, set it back against the crate, and returned both hands to the paper cup warming between his palms. Lieutenant Luke Kerrigan saw the puppy first. 10 weeks old, maybe 11, black and tan, with one ear upright and the other folded at the tip. Her paws looked borrowed from a larger dog. She stood without trembling beneath the striped awning at Millstone Crossing Market, studying the Saturday crowd with the grave concentration of an animal trying to understand why everyone had somewhere to go. Luke slowed beside a stall selling winter apples. He had left the naval station 20 minutes earlier and still wore his Type 3 working uniform, the green digital pattern too cleanly ordered for a market full of muddy boots and canvas grocery bags. The uniform carried his name and service. Nothing on it told strangers what kind of work he did, and he preferred it that way. At 30, he had learned that people behaved differently when they thought they knew what a man had survived. He hadn't planned to stop. His refrigerator held half a carton of eggs, mustard, and a bottle of water. The market was supposed to solve that problem. Then he would return to his off-base apartment, line up the groceries, clean a kitchen that was already clean, and spend the evening listening to the upstairs neighbor move furniture no human being could possibly own. Instead, he stood across from a $10 dog. The man beside her looked past 60 until Luke came closer. Then certain details argued for younger. Dark hair gone iron gray at the temples rather than white. Long fingers without the swollen joints of age. A face sharpened by missed meals instead of years. His brown coat was too large. One cuff had been repaired with blue surgical tape. A field watch circled his left wrist. Its crystal cracked, and its hands stopped at 2:17. 2 men in work jackets had already noticed the sign. One was broad through the waist and carried a nylon slip lead looped around his fist. The other held his phone low, recording the puppy as though she were merchandise at an auction. $10? The broad man asked. What is she, sick? The homeless man looked at him with pale gray eyes. No. Then what's wrong with her? Nothing that a decent room won't fix. The second man laughed and leaned toward the crate. The puppy moved backward until her hindquarters touched the homeless man's shin. He lowered one hand without looking and rested 2 fingers against the side of her neck. Not gripping. Measuring. Luke recognized the habit without knowing where he had seen it before. The man's thumb found the soft hollow beneath the puppy's jaw. His gaze moved once over her breathing, her stance, the wet shine of her nose. Then it returned to the 2 buyers. We'll take her, the broad man said. No. Your sign says 10. I've got 10. The sign says good home. The man's partner reached for the puppy. Luke stepped between the hand and the crate before he had decided to move. He said no, Luke said. The broad man looked at Luke's uniform, then at his face. This doesn't concern the Navy. Good thing I'm buying groceries. Then buy them. Luke held his gaze. He didn't raise his voice or square his shoulders. Men expecting a contest often became uncertain when no one gave them one. Behind him, the puppy's nails clicked softly against the wooden crate. The wind snapped the awning overhead. 5 empty paper cups toppled from beneath the man's folding chair and struck the pavement in quick succession. Pop, 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 pop. The homeless man dropped so fast his cup rolled from his hands. He crouched beside the crate with one arm over his head, eyes fixed on something far above the market roofs. Rotors crossing east, he said. His voice had changed, crisp now, urgent. Keep the litters low. Last bird comes back for medical. How many seats were left? The market continued around him. A woman weighed onions. A child somewhere beyond the bakery stall asked for cider. No helicopter crossed the washed white November sky. Luke lowered himself slowly, leaving space between them. You're at Millstone Crossing. It's Saturday morning. The man's breathing stayed shallow for 3 counts. The puppy pushed her nose against the repaired cuff of his coat. He looked down. Something in his face loosened, then closed again. 5, he whispered. 5 what? The man gathered the cups before answering. Nothing you came here to carry. The 2 buyers had backed away during the episode. The broad one muttered that the dog was probably stolen. His partner puts away the phone. They disappeared toward the parking lot with the brisk, offended walk of men who wanted everyone to believe leaving had been their idea. Luke helped set the cups beneath the chair. All 5 had names written on them, but rain and handling had softened the ink until only the first letters remained. MLDRS. You expecting company? Luke asked. Every morning. The man sat again. His hands shook once as he lifted the fallen cup, then became still. He inspected the puppy's eyes by drawing down each lower lid with practiced care. He pressed gently along her ribs, checked the pads of her feet, and turned the folded ear toward the light. You're a vet? No. The answer arrived too quickly. Luke looked at the sign. Why $10? Free dogs go to people who want something for nothing. $10 makes them tell you a story about why they're kind. Most stories don't last 2 questions. And mine? You haven't told one yet. The puppy sat against the man's boot. A pale mark showed beneath her chin like a thumbprint left in cream. Luke had never owned a dog. He had worked near military dogs and respected the distance between admiration and competence. A puppy needed vaccines, food, training, time, and someone willing to be interrupted for years. His apartment allowed pets. His life did not, at least not the way he had arranged it. The man watched him arrive at each objection. There are easier animals, he said. That's not much of a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell her, I'm trying to place her. What's her name? Sadie. She knows the sound, not the obligation. Luke crouched beside the crate and offered the back of his hand. Sadie leaned forward, sniffed his knuckles, then withdrew. He didn't follow. A few seconds later, she tried again, breathing in the smells of cold air, canvas, gun oil, that no amount of washing fully removed, and the apple Luke had handled at the last stall. Her nose touched his skin. Her tail moved once. The homeless man noticed Luke waiting rather than reaching. Where would she sleep? In my apartment. Stairs? 1 flight. Other animals? None. How long are you gone? Luke answered honestly. Too long some days. I can arrange help. Arrange it before you need it. The instruction carried the weight of an order. Luke nodded. Where did you find her? Freight side of the market. Plastic carrier, no tag, no blanket. She'd been there long enough to stop calling out. Did you report her? Market office called animal control. Shelter's full. They said they'd send someone Monday. Luke looked at Sadie again. Monday was 2 nights away. The forecast called for the first hard freeze of the season. He took a $10 bill from his wallet. The man did not reach for it. Name, he said. Luke Kerrigan. The gray eyes dropped to the stitched tape above Luke's pocket, confirming what he had heard. For an instant, the man's attention sharpened with almost painful clarity. Service doesn't make a man safe, Lieutenant. Luke had not given his rank. He studied the man's face, but the moment was already gone. No, Luke said. What he does when no one has to salute him might. The man accepted the bill. From inside his coat, he produced a flattened paper grocery bag and wrote a receipt in narrow block letters. $10 received for temporary care of female shepherd puppy pending owner search. His handwriting was steady enough to belong on a chart. Temporary care, Luke read. Do it correctly. Chip scan, found animal report. Hold period. $10 doesn't erase whoever may be looking for her. Luke folded the receipt and placed it behind the notebook in his breast pocket. What's your name? The man looked toward the road beyond the market. Marcus? Marcus what? Hail when it matters. Luke bought a cheap collar from the farm stall and carried Sadie to his truck because she was too young to cross a busy parking lot on an unfamiliar leash. She fit against his chest with surprising warmth. Marcus stood to watch them go, one hand lifted near his face. Not quite a wave, more like a man shielding his eyes from distant rotor wash. At Millstone Veterinary Clinic, the technician found no chip. She recorded Sadie's markings, photographed the pale patch beneath her chin, and sent the report to animal control. Luke signed the foster form and scheduled vaccinations. By the time he left, Sadie had fallen asleep inside his uniform jacket, with her head resting over his forearm. He bought a crate, food, bowls, enzyme cleaner, 2 chew toys, and a bed she ignored in favor of the truck's rubber floor mat. The total came to $143.18. The $10 receipt in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with every mile. Luke returned to the market before closing. He brought soup in a lidded container, fresh socks, and the address of a warming center Dana Ruiz had once mentioned during a base outreach briefing. He told himself this was completion. Marcus had transferred a responsibility, and Luke was closing the loose ends. The striped awning had been taken down. The produce crate was gone. A market worker swept cabbage leaves toward the gutter, while vendors folded tables into vans. "Man who was sitting here?" Luke asked. The worker shook her head. "Left around noon." "Did he say where?" "Men like that don't usually leave itineraries." Luke walked behind the shuttered stalls. The temperature had dropped, and his breath showed pale against the loading doors. Sadie slept in the truck where he could see her through the windshield, curled inside the jacket he had left around her. Near the brick wall, sheltered from the wind, 5 paper cups stood in a straight line. Each one was empty. Each one faced the road. Luke set the soup beside them. Then he noticed the marks in the dust. 4 circles where cups had rested for a long time, and 1 clean place at the end of the row, newly added that morning. He looked toward the road Marcus had been watching. No one was there. Sadie discovered at 4:43 on Sunday morning that the metal food bowl made a satisfying sound when pushed across tile. She chased it from the kitchen to the hallway, stopped when it struck the baseboard, then looked toward Luke as if he had arranged the experiment for her benefit. Luke lay on top of the blankets with one forearm over his eyes. He had slept through mortar drills, cargo flights, and a roommate who once tried to repair a motorcycle carburetor beside his bunk. A 10-week-old shepherd rolling an empty bowl defeated him in under a minute. "You ate at 4:15. Sadie sat, her left ear folded forward while the right stood straight, giving her the expression of someone politely rejecting his evidence. Luke rose, measured water into the bowl, and marked the time in a small notebook he had repurposed for feeding, bathroom breaks, vaccination dates, and every phone number connected to the found animal report. The pages made the situation look controlled. The apartment did not. A chew toy rested beneath the kitchen table. 1 sock had vanished. The new dog bed remained untouched, while Sadie slept inside the open crate on Luke's folded uniform jacket. By Monday afternoon, Luke had called the market office twice, the warming center 3 times, 2 local shelters, and the county veterans desk. No one had admitted Marcus Hale under that name. The market manager finally told him to come by after the loading rush, when she would have time to talk. Luke arrived just after 3 in his working uniform, Sadie secured in a soft carrier against his chest. The veterinary technician had given the puppy her first vaccinations and approved brief controlled outings as long as Luke kept her off public ground and away from unknown animals. He followed the instruction with the seriousness of a man transporting fragile equipment. Millstone Crossing looked smaller without the Saturday crowd. Half the awnings were gone. Delivery vans occupied the center lane, and vendors packed crates beneath a sky the color of unpolished steel. The 5 cups had disappeared from the brick wall. Luke had returned Sunday morning and found the soup untouched, its lid silvered with frost. The market manager waited beside the office door. Tess Bloom was 58, square-built, with cropped white hair and a red quilted vest over a flannel shirt. A pencil lived behind one ear. Another had been pushed through her hair and forgotten. "You're the Navy man," she said. "Luke Kerrigan. I can read the tape. That doesn't tell me why you're asking shelters about Marcus." Sadie shifted inside the carrier. Tess's expression softened toward the puppy and immediately hardened again toward Luke. "He transferred her to me pending the owner's search," Luke said. "I've filed everything. I came back because the temperature dropped and he left without his soup. Maybe he didn't want your soup. Then he can tell me." Tess studied him for a moment. "Marcus has been around since early fall, comes before sunrise, leaves before the dinner trucks roll in, never asks customers for money, fixes loose cartwheels and tells vendors when their hands are shaking too much to use a box cutter. Where does he sleep? If he wanted me to know, I'd know." Luke glanced toward the freight end of the market. "What about the cups?" The pencil behind Tess's ear stopped moving when her jaw tightened. 5 every morning, black coffee in one, nothing in the others. He puts them where they can see the road. Names? He doesn't talk about them. A vendor called Tess from across the lane. A stack of apple boxes had shifted on a dolly, and one corner was beginning to lean. She excused herself with a look that suggested Luke's questions had reached their daily limit. He walked toward the loading side, carrying Sadie above the pavement. The puppy watched forklifts pass with solemn fascination. Near the shuttered bakery stall, Luke found a wool blanket folded beneath an overhang, 2 sealed water bottles, and the pair of socks he had left with the soup. Marcus had taken those. The warming center address lay on top of the blanket, folded into quarters. Sadie pushed her nose against the carrier mesh and gave a small, breathy whine. "I know," Luke said. "Incomplete task." The words sounded normal until he heard himself. He had turned a missing man into a list because lists did not refuse help, disappear, or look at him as though his uniform carried the memory of every order ever obeyed. Behind him, a crate struck the pavement. Luke turned. An apple vendor stood beside his stall, with one hand gripping the table edge. He was a broad man in his late 50s, red apron tied beneath a heavy coat. His other hand moved once toward his chest, missed, and dropped. The color left his face before his knees folded. "Earl!" Tess shouted. Luke set Sadie's carrier on a clean wooden pallet and reached the vendor as he hit the ground. Tess was already calling emergency services. Luke checked for responsiveness and normal breathing. Earl gave one broken gasp that did not become another. "Get the AED," Luke said. A young stock clerk froze beside the office. Luke pointed. "Green cabinet by the door. Bring it here." The command moved him. Luke opened Earl's coat and positioned his hands, but another voice cut across the lane. "Center of the chest. Let it come all the way back up." Marcus came from behind the delivery trucks at a run. For 1 second, Luke barely recognized him. The stoop was gone. The uncertainty had emptied from his face. Marcus dropped to his knees opposite Luke, placed 2 fingers near Earl's neck, watched the chest, then met Luke's eyes. "I'll compress. You manage the AED." Luke shifted without argument. Marcus locked his elbows and began. His rhythm was even, his shoulders positioned over his hands, each movement controlled enough to seem quiet despite the hard work beneath it. "Tess, tell dispatch adult male, approximately 58, unresponsive, not breathing normally," Marcus said. "Ask for the closest ALS unit. Someone clear the lane. No crowd over him." He knew Tess's name. He knew exactly which details mattered and which did not. The clerk arrived with the AED. Luke opened it, exposed Earl's chest, and placed the pads where the diagrams showed. Marcus lifted his hands only when the device instructed everyone to stand clear. "Nobody touching him?" Luke said. The machine analyzed. The market held still around its flat electronic voice. A forklift idled at the far gate. Loose plastic snapped along a stall roof. The AED advised a shock. Luke checked the circle of hands and knees. "Clear." Earl's body moved once when the device delivered it. Marcus resumed compressions immediately. No speech, no performance. He counted under his breath until the approaching siren grew loud enough to enter the lane. 2 paramedics took over. Marcus gave his report in clipped sequence. Witnessed collapse, abnormal breathing, CPR started, 1 AED shock, compressions continued. The senior paramedic looked at him twice, first at his face, then at the worn coat repaired with blue tape. "Medical background?" she asked. Marcus stared at Earl instead of answering. The monitor showed an organized rhythm. Earl remained unresponsive, but one paramedic told Tess they had circulation and were transporting immediately. The vendors stepped back as the stretcher rolled toward the ambulance. Someone began to cry softly near the apple stall. Someone else stacked the fallen fruit as if order could be restored 1 apple at a time. Luke retrieved Sadie's carrier. The puppy had pressed herself into the rear corner during the noise. He crouched, opened the top, and let her smell his hand before lifting her against his chest. "You did well," he told her, though all she had done was wait. Marcus stood several yards away, rubbing his palms down the sides of his coat. The doctor-like clarity remained in his posture. Then the ambulance doors closed. Red light swept across the market office. It crossed Marcus's face once, disappeared, and returned brighter against the glass. His eyes fixed on the pulse of it. The lane, the vendors, and the gray Pennsylvania afternoon seemed to fall away from him at the same time. "Ward 3 is still taking casualties," he said. The ambulance light turned again. Marcus backed toward the shuttered stall. "Move the walking wounded west. Keep the east corridor open. Rowan has recovery. Delaney stays with respiratory." Tess reached for his sleeve. Luke stopped her with a small shake of his head. "Marcus," Luke said. He kept his voice below the siren. "You're at Millstone Crossing, Monday, November 27th. Marcus looked through him. "Lieutenant, I told you to get on the second bird. My name is Luke Kerrigan. Sadie's here." At the sound of her name, the puppy moved inside Luke's arms. He lowered himself and set her on the folded blanket beneath the overhang, away from the traffic lane. Sadie sniffed the wool, recognized it, and pulled toward Marcus until the leash became gently taut. Luke let her cross the short distance. She touched her nose to the repaired cuff and sat on Marcus's boot. Nothing changed at once. Marcus still watched the flashing light. His breath remained high and quick, then his hand lowered by inches until 2 fingers rested between Sadie's ears. "Sadie," he said. "That's right. She needs the second vaccine in 3 weeks. It's scheduled." Marcus swallowed. The ambulance turned out of the market, and the red light thinned across the brick wall before disappearing. Cold gray daylight returned. Marcus looked down at his hands as though they belonged to someone he had once known. "Earl?" "They got circulation back," Luke said. "He's on the way to the hospital." Tess stood beside the apple stall with one hand over her mouth. Her suspicion of Luke had gone somewhere else, replaced by the frightened respect people carried after watching an ordinary minute split open. Marcus stepped away from Sadie. "I should go. You just helped keep a man alive. That doesn't make this a good day." He bent for the blanket too quickly. Something slipped from inside his coat and struck the pavement near Luke's boot. It was a laminated identification card, warped by heat and darkened along one edge. Marcus reached for it. Luke picked it up first, intending only to hand it back. A younger face remained beneath the cloudy plastic. Marcus, with close-cut dark hair, clean-shaven, wearing a uniform Luke recognized before he read a single word. The upper corner had been burned away. The center had not. Commander Marcus Hale, Naval Medical Corps. Marcus took the identification card from Luke and held it against his coat as if warmth might restore the missing corner. The ambulance was gone. The market lane had begun moving again, but more carefully now, every vendor aware of the space where Earl had fallen. "Commander," Luke said. Marcus looked at the rank on the card. "Past tense." Medical Corps isn't past tense when a man stops breathing. Training stays longer than the person who earned it. He slid the card into his inner pocket and reached for the blanket. Sadie remained on one end, forcing him to tug gently. The puppy thought this was an invitation to play and clamped her small teeth into the wool. For the first time, Marcus almost smiled. It appeared only at one corner of his mouth, worn thin by disuse. "Let me call someone," Luke said. "You already called everyone." "You knew that?" "Tess talks when she's worried." Marcus freed the blanket from Sadie and folded it with care. Luke could have stopped him. He could have placed himself between Marcus and the freight exit, the way he had blocked the men reaching for the puppy. The thought came quickly and felt useful. That was precisely why he rejected it. "Her name is Dana Ruiz," Luke said. "She works with veterans who don't fit neatly into the forms. She'll meet wherever you choose. No hospitals." "I didn't say hospital." "No office with a door behind me. You choose the place." Marcus looked at Sadie, then toward the road. "Tomorrow, here, 7:15. If you're late, I leave." He walked away before Luke could answer. Dana arrived at 7:10 the next morning, carrying a canvas satchel and 2 coffees. She was 42, compact and steady, with dark curls tied at the base of her neck and a tan coat whose pockets sagged under pens, forms, hand warmers, and things people forgot they needed until she placed them on a table. She wore no badge around her neck. The identification remained inside her wallet until Marcus asked to see it. He appeared at 7:14. The 3 of them sat beneath the market overhang. Sadie occupied a clean pad beside Luke, wrapped in a fleece coat she clearly considered an insult. Marcus examined Dana's credentials, read the privacy notice, and asked what system she intended to search. Dana answered every question without rushing. "I can confirm service and eligibility through the Veterans Network if you authorize it. Medical records require a separate release. We can begin with identity only. Or, we can do nothing today." "And him?" Marcus asked, nodding toward Luke. "He gets only what you say he gets." Marcus read the authorization twice. His hands were steady. He corrected the apartment number Dana had printed for the market office, initialed the change, and signed Marcus Elias Hale in narrow block letters that matched the receipt in Luke's pocket. "Identity only," he said. Dana photographed the form and sent it through an encrypted casework application. Then she put the phone away. No promises, no speech about fresh starts. "It's colder tonight," she said. Tess has a maintenance garage behind produce too. Roll-up door, side exit, electric heater. The main door can stay open 12 inches if that helps. Marcus's attention moved toward the roofline. No shelter intake? Not tonight. A cot, blankets, restroom access, and a carbon monoxide detector. You keep the key. Why? Because frostbite creates paperwork I don't enjoy. Luke watched Marcus test the sentence for pity. Dana had removed it before offering. One night, Marcus said, the garage smelled of plywood, machine oil, and old onions from the storage room next door. Tess had swept the concrete and positioned the cot where Marcus could see both exits. Luke installed the heater far enough from the bedding to satisfy the printed clearance instructions. Dana checked the detector. Marcus moved the cot 6 inches closer to the open roll-up door and accepted the arrangement. That evening, Luke brought Sadie after her feeding. The puppy chased a rubber ring across the clean section of floor, tripped over her own front feet, and sat up looking offended by gravity. Marcus repaired the ring's fraying edge with a strip of tape. Luke made a note to replace it. Marcus noticed and shook his head. You turn everything into inventory. Inventory prevents surprises. No, it tells you what the surprise took afterward. Before Luke could answer, Marcus placed 5 paper cups along the workbench. He poured coffee into the first and left the other 4 empty. The letters were clearer under the garage light. M-L-D-R-S. Sadie had been asleep beside the heater. Without warning, she rose and hurried toward the side door as Marcus crossed the threshold. Her nails skittered over concrete. She reached the end of her leash and looked back at Luke, body angled after the disappearing coat. Luke moved at once. Marcus stood outside beneath the security lamp, staring into the service lane. His lips moved around numbers Luke could not hear. The temperature had fallen below freezing, and Marcus wore no hat. You leaving? Luke asked, checking the landing zone. Luke kept the side door open behind him. What do you see? Marcus studied the empty lane. Too narrow, utility lines east, ambulances block the west approach. Sadie pulled once toward him. Luke shortened the distance without releasing her. The puppy reached Marcus's boot, found the loose lace, and worried it gently between her teeth. Marcus looked down. She'll swallow the aglet. Then you should take it away from her. He bent and freed the lace. His fingers retied it by habit, double knot, even loops. When he straightened, the service lane had become a service lane again. Inside? Luke asked. Marcus glanced at the visible roof beams. Door stays open. Door stays open. They returned to the workbench. Luke did not ask about the letters. He waited until Marcus picked up the M cup and took a drink. Leah Rowan, Marcus said at last. Recovery nurse. Could start an IV in a moving truck and make you apologize for bleeding on her floor. David Delaney ran respiratory. Raphael Soto handled supply. Simone Price was the youngest. Surgical resident. Better hands than mine at 29. Luke looked at the 4 empty cups. What happened? Marcus rolled the cup between his palms. Forward surgical site. Too many patients and not enough lift. First helicopter took 6, second took 5. We kept the patients who couldn't move, and a skeleton team to manage them until the last aircraft returned. You stayed. I made the plan. The heater clicked off. Cold air moved through the gap beneath the roll-up door. There was a second impact, Marcus continued. East side. I remember the ceiling coming down in pieces. I remember telling Delaney to move oxygen away from the heat. Then I remember rotor vibration beneath my spine. You woke on the helicopter. Marcus nodded once. There was one patient beside me. One. I occupied a seat that belonged to somebody else. You don't know that. I was the chief surgeon. I know exactly what one seat means. Luke heard the wall inside the statement. Marcus had built it from rank, arithmetic, and grief. There would be no climbing it that night. Dana's phone rang the following morning, while Luke was attempting to teach Sadie that his left boot was not a chew toy. She asked him to come to the market but would not explain over the phone. Marcus was awake when Luke arrived. The 5 cups stood on the workbench. Dana sat across from him with a slim folder closed beneath one hand. Your service identity checked out, she told Marcus. Trauma surgeon, multiple deployments, citations for care during mass casualty operations. You entered treatment after the evacuation event, then stopped attending appointments 18 months later. Marcus looked at the open garage door. I remember leaving. Do you authorize me to review records connected to that event? It may include medical information and casualty documentation. He did not answer immediately. Sadie wandered to the workbench and settled beside his boot, chewing the end of her own leash. "What are you looking for?" Marcus asked. "Nothing unless you ask." Luke could see his own preferred answer forming. Search everything. Build the timeline. Solve the problem. Dana did not offer it. Marcus removed the broken watch from his wrist. A pale band circled the skin beneath it. He set the watch beside the M cup. "Find the manifest," he said. Dana placed a second authorization in front of him. He read and signed it. The records did not arrive as one clean history. They came over 3 days in scanned pages, partial indexes, an archived casualty summary, and correspondence between facilities whose systems had never been designed to speak to one another. Dana printed only what Marcus had authorized and kept the rest behind her login. 3 names were marked lost at the site: David Delaney, Raphael Soto, Simone Price. Leah Rowan's line contained no final identification confirmation. Marcus read the casualty page without touching it. His coffee cooled beside his hand. Luke had expected relief at finding a gap, some visible opening in the wall Marcus had built, but uncertainty seemed to frighten him more than the familiar verdict. The dead stayed where memory put them. A missing line could move anywhere. "A blank isn't a survivor," Marcus said. "No," Dana replied. "It's a reason to keep reading." Sadie placed one oversized paw on the toe of Marcus's boot. He did not look down, but his foot stopped moving beneath the table. Dana followed a transfer reference into the intake log of an Allied hospital. Halfway down a blurred page, she found an entry typed 8 hours after the field site had gone silent. She turned the page toward Marcus and pointed to the misspelled name, Leah Rohan, transferred alive. The word alive did not change Marcus's face. He read the hospital entry once, then again, tracing the misspelled name without touching the paper. "Leah Rohan could be anyone," he said. Dana turned the intake page sideways. Same approximate age, same transfer window. Recovery nurse listed among unidentified coalition personnel. The original entry says a partial name was copied from a damaged card. Could still be anyone. Yes. Marcus looked up, surprised by the agreement. Dana closed the folder. "So we verify before we decide what it means." Luke stood near the garage door with Sadie's leash around one wrist. The puppy had grown comfortable enough to fall asleep anywhere Marcus stayed longer than 5 minutes. She lay beneath the workbench with her chin across his boot, unaware that one blurred line had just moved a person from a row of empty cups back into the world. The search took shape through ordinary channels. Dana sent an authorized inquiry to the Allied Hospital's records liaison. A casualty assistance office confirmed that an identity correction had been filed months after the field site evacuation. It remained inside the Allied transfer archive, instead of propagating to the casualty summary used by Marcus's treatment team. His copy had been printed before the correction, and no automatic alert was generated when the 2 systems were reconciled years later. Leah Rohan became Leah Rowan on one page, then Leah Bell after a marriage recorded 6 years later. A medical retirement followed. Her contact preference stated that no information should be released to former unit members. "She asked not to be found," Marcus said. "She asked that her information stay private," Dana replied. "That isn't the same as refusing a message she hasn't seen. I can ask an accredited peer contact service to forward one. They won't give us her address or number. She decides whether to answer." Luke had already opened his notebook. "We should assemble the event timeline first. Flight order, patient count, structural report, who signed the casualty sheet." Dana reached across the workbench and closed the notebook with 2 fingers. "We?" Luke's jaw tightened. "The record is wrong. Some of it is incomplete. Marcus decides whether incomplete becomes investigated. Leah decides whether she answers. You don't get to turn 2 people into an objective because objectives are easier than waiting." The correction landed with more accuracy than kindness, which was likely why Dana had delivered it that way. Luke looked toward Marcus. "Do you want us to continue?" Marcus lifted the first cup, found it empty, and set it down. "I want to know if she's alive. And if she is, that's a different consent form." Dana nodded. "Then we verify life status, nothing else." By late afternoon, the peer service confirmed that Leah Bell lived in Arden Falls, 2 counties west. No address came with the confirmation, no phone number, only the fact that she had renewed her veteran health enrollment that year and had agreed to receive one written message. Marcus sat on the cot while Dana explained. The roll-up door remained open 12 inches. Cold air entered along the concrete, and Sadie had discovered that lying across the draft made her fleece coat inflate slightly around the shoulders. "What should the message say?" Dana asked. Marcus stared at the 5 cups. "Tell her I know she survived." "She already knows that." "Then tell her I didn't." Dana waited. Marcus rubbed the pale band beneath his broken watch. "Tell her Marcus Hale is alive. Tell her he remembers the second lift leaving. Tell her he doesn't remember getting on it." "Do you want a reply?" His answer took long enough for Sadie to wake, circle twice, and settle again. "Only if she chooses." Dana wrote exactly that. Luke drove home with Sadie sleeping in the passenger carrier, and the unanswered question riding above the dashboard. His training had taught him to reduce uncertainty. Mark the last known position, establish communications, assign time limits, move. None of those habits knew what to do with a woman who had every right not to answer, or a man who had finally asked without demanding. At the apartment, Sadie dragged the corner of her bed into the kitchen and fell asleep with her head beneath Luke's chair. He opened his notebook and wrote Leah Rowan at the top of a clean page. Under it, he listed the hospital, transfer window, name correction, and peer contact service. The next line began, possible route to Arden Falls. Luke stared at it. Then he drew one line through the words, not hard enough to tear the paper, only enough to make them unavailable. Dana had been right. He could prepare the vehicle, carry the records, and stand beside the door. He could not breach another person's silence and call it rescue. Sadie woke when he closed the notebook. She placed both front paws against his shin, asking for the bathroom trip he had nearly worked past. Luke clipped on her leash and left the page unfinished. The next records arrived the following morning. Luke came to the garage after duty and found Marcus standing at the workbench in a clean gray sweatshirt Tess had left with the blankets. His large coat hung near the heater. Without its bulk, he looked less like an old man and more like someone who had been steadily reducing himself to fit inside a punishment. Dana had printed 3 pages. One was the emergency extraction sheet from Lark 2's return to the site after the 2 scheduled patient lifts. Marcus's name appeared beside the words, urgent evacuation. Another was a first aid note written by a rescue technician whose block lettering had survived scanning better than most typed pages. Hale found unresponsive after secondary structural impact, suspected head injury, loaded by litter team, unable to consent or follow commands. Luke read it twice. "You didn't take the seat. They carried you." Marcus did not look at him. "I wrote the hold plan. You kept medical staff with patients who couldn't move. I kept 4 people beneath a roof that was failing. You stayed with them. Until I didn't." Luke felt the old instinct rise, the need to strike each false conclusion with a fact until the structure collapsed. But Marcus was not defending an argument. He was defending the shape his life had taken. Remove it too fast, and there might be nothing underneath capable of standing. Dana slid the helicopter manifest across the bench. A narrow steel clip held the pages together. Marcus reached for it. The cold metal touched the pad of his index finger. His hand stopped. Then both hands moved away from the paper and turned palm up beneath an invisible stream. Marcus rubbed thumb to fingertips, palm to palm, around each wrist. The motions were quick and exact, the sequence of a surgical scrub performed without water, sink, or conscious decision. "Marcus," Dana said. He continued, eyes fixed on his hands. "Simone missed under her left thumbnail. Every time. I told her if she contaminated my field again, she'd clean instruments for a month." "What happened next?" She laughed. His hands slowed. "After the second impact," Dana said gently. "What happened next?" "I don't know." "That's allowed?" Marcus lowered his hands. Sadie rose from the floor and nosed one hanging shoelace, but he did not respond. Luke shortened the leash before the puppy could chew it through. The moment belonged to Marcus, not to a dog performing a miracle around him. "The note says you were unconscious," Luke said. "The manifest says you were urgent evacuation. The plan was mine before the note existed." Dana gathered the pages except for the first aid report, which Marcus asked to keep. "Knowing you were carried out may change part of the story. It doesn't order you to forgive yourself." That evening, the peer contact service called Dana. Leah had received the message. She declined direct contact and requested that no additional message be forwarded. Dana delivered the answer in the garage, with Luke present because Marcus asked him to stay. Marcus listened without interruption. He folded the first aid note into a square no larger than the receipt he had written for Sadie. She remembers, he said. We don't know what she remembers, Luke replied. Enough to say no. He reached for his coat. Are you leaving? Dana asked. For a walk. I still have the key. It was a small sentence, but Luke heard the choice inside it. Marcus was leaving the garage without abandoning it. Sadie watched him go and leaned toward the open door. Luke held the leash loose. Marcus returned 23 minutes later, carrying a bag of coffee and 5 new cups. The next morning, he set them along the workbench. He poured coffee into the M cup and left the others empty, their letters facing the road as always. Luke took out his phone. May I photograph them? Marcus looked at him. Why? Because a casualty report tells Leah you survived. The cups tell her you remembered. Marcus studied the row. The L cup stood second, its rim perfectly level with the others. One photograph, he said. No faces, no location. She can refuse that too. Dana sent the image through the same service with a final note stating that no response was expected and no further contact would follow. Then they waited. Luke went to duty. Marcus helped Tess repair a warped hinge on the market office. Sadie received her next deworming dose and spent an afternoon trying to carry a cardboard box larger than her body through Luke's kitchen doorway. 3 days passed. At 6:12 on the 4th evening, Dana's phone vibrated while they sat in the garage eating soup from paper bowls. She read the screen, but did not turn it toward anyone. Marcus, she said, Leah sent a message. Do you want me to read it? The spoon remained halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully. Yes. Dana placed the phone on the workbench between the 5 cups. I'll meet him. I want to hear why he left us. Leah Bell arrived 11 minutes early and remained in her car until the exact time she had agreed to enter. Luke watched through the community center window as she turned off the engine, sat with both hands on the steering wheel, then opened the door at 10 o'clock precisely. She was 47, tall and narrow-shouldered, with brown hair cut bluntly at her jaw and a streak of silver near the right temple. A dark wool coat reached her knees. She carried no purse, only a blue folder held flat against her side. Her face had the controlled stillness of someone who had spent years keeping other people calm, while refusing to ask what calm cost her. The meeting room had been arranged according to choices, not convenience. Door open. Chairs with a clear path between them. Dana at a table near the rear wall. Luke by the window with Sadie on a short leash. 5 paper cups lined the center table, one filled with coffee. Marcus had arrived in the gray sweatshirt Tess gave him, clean work pants, and the old coat folded across the back of his chair. He had shaved unevenly with a disposable razor. The effort made him look more exposed, not more prepared. Twice he adjusted the cups so their rims formed one straight line. Twice Luke pretended not to notice. Dana had reviewed the rules before Leah arrived. No one would block the doorway. No one would touch either participant without permission, and the meeting could end without resolution. Luke understood each condition. He was less comfortable with the last. His world rewarded conclusions. This room had been built to permit 2 people to leave carrying questions. Marcus stood when Leah entered. She stopped 3 steps inside. For several seconds, neither spoke. Luke had expected recognition to look dramatic. Instead, Leah's gaze moved over Marcus piece by piece. Iron gray hair, worn coat, thin face, broken watch. Hands resting empty at his sides. She seemed to be checking an old chart against a patient who had arrived too late. You got old, she said. Marcus nodded. So did you. I had permission. The answer struck him without raising her voice. Dana gestured toward the chairs. You can sit, stand, leave, or ask us to leave. The records are here if either of you wants them. Nothing is being recorded. Leah chose the chair facing the open door. Marcus sat across from her. Sadie settled beside Luke, but her eyes remained on Marcus. You wanted to know why I left, he said. I wanted to hear what you call it. I don't remember leaving. Leah gave a small, humorless breath. Convenient. Marcus accepted the word. I remember the first lift, 6 patients. I remember the second taking 5. We had 4 who couldn't move, and we kept a skeleton team. I told you another aircraft would return. You promised. Yes. Then the east section came down. We moved recovery into supply. Delaney went looking for the portable oxygen. When I came back, your cot was empty and a helicopter was lifting out. Marcus looked at the M cup. I woke inside it, and you never came back. I tried to return after treatment. They told me the site was gone and all 4 of you had been lost. I wasn't lost. I was in 3 hospitals under a name no one could spell. I know that now. You had years to know it." The words crossed the table cleanly. Marcus's shoulders drew inward, but he did not defend himself. Luke saw his attention begin to narrow around the cups, the room fading at its edges. A coffee maker in the hallway sputtered. Someone had left the pot on too long, and the bitter smell of scorched coffee drifted through the open door. Marcus and Leah both turned toward it. "Delaney," they said together. Leah's hand tightened around the blue folder. "He could ruin coffee with military precision. He said bitterness kept people honest. He said that after you banned him from touching the good grounds." For one breath, the room held the shape of a shared joke. Then Leah looked back at the 4 empty cups, and it closed. "David went back for the oxygen because you told him the last bird was coming," she said. "I believed it was. Raphael believed you. Simone believed you. I believed you." Marcus's fingers began rubbing the palm to palm beneath the table. His gaze moved past Leah toward a corridor that was not there. "Ward 3 needs the west exit clear," he said. "Rowan, move recovery." "Delaney, shut the manifold." Sadie rose. She walked as far as the leash allowed and pressed her shoulder against Marcus's boot. The contact did not bring him back. His hands kept moving. His breath shortened. Dana remained seated. "Marcus, you're in the Millstone Community Center. The door is open. Your feet are on a blue carpet." Luke loosened the leash enough for Sadie to remain near Marcus without climbing on him. The puppy looked up, waited, then sat. Ordinary proximity. Nothing more. Leah watched Marcus's hands. Anger still held her face, but something beneath it had shifted. She had known surgeons who performed scrub sequences in their sleep after long rotations. She had never seen Marcus do it in daylight while looking 20 years behind her. "Marcus," she said. His hands stopped for half a second. "What color was the recovery tarp?" "Blue." "It was green." "Look at the carpet." He looked down. "Blue," he said. "That's here. Stay here." His breathing did not settle immediately. He counted the dark squares in the carpet. Sadie shifted her weight against his boot. After several minutes, Marcus lifted his head. "I'm sorry," he said. Leah's expression hardened again, though not in quite the same place. "Don't apologize for that. Answer the question." Dana brought the records to the table. She placed the first 2 flight manifests side by side. Every listed passenger was a patient, except for essential flight medical crew. Marcus's name appeared only on the later emergency extraction sheet. "The first 2 lifts carried 11 patients," Dana said. Marcus remained at the site. After the secondary impact, a returning aircraft landed for less than 4 minutes. She laid down the rescue note. "Hale found unresponsive. Suspected head injury. Loaded by litter team. Unable to consent or follow commands." Leah read the words once. "Who wrote this?" "Staff Sergeant Cole Avery, rescue technician," Dana said. He also provided a statement last week after Marcus authorized contact. Luca opened the final transcript. He read only the relevant lines. "Dr. Hale was unconscious when we reached him. We believed he might not survive another delay. He did not take a seat or order us to load him. We carried him. Before the impact, he had placed every transportable patient on the first 2 lifts and remained with the hold team." Leah looked at Marcus. "You were unconscious? Apparently? You never told me. Until 8 days ago, I thought I walked onto that aircraft. Why?" Marcus touched the broken watch. "Because I woke there. Because 4 people were gone and I was not. The mind prefers a crime it can assign to a person. I was available." Leah lowered her eyes to the papers. Her anger did not disappear. It lost its single target. "The roof failed after the aircraft left," she said. "Simone heard it first. Raphael pulled me toward the reinforced drug room. I went back because David was still in recovery. All 3 of them pushed me through the doorway." Her voice thinned, and she waited until it belonged to her again. "The inner wall held. They were on the other side. An Allied ground team found me hours later. My ID card was damaged. I couldn't speak clearly. Someone entered Rohan instead of Rowan, and the mistake followed me through 2 transfers." Marcus did not move. "I asked about you when I could," Leah continued. "They said the chief surgeon had been evacuated. No one said unconscious. No one said you had stayed through the first lifts. I imagine you hearing the aircraft and deciding 1 doctor mattered more than 4 staff. I imagine myself doing the same thing. So we both sentenced you. You had reason. I had a fragment. Marcus looked at David's cup, then Raphael's, then Simone's. The hold plan was still mine. It was ours, Leah said. I argued for keeping recovery staffed. David refused to leave the patients on oxygen. Raphael said he could make supplies last. Simone volunteered before either of us asked. You don't get to honor our choices by pretending we had none. The sentence reached Marcus differently from the evidence. Documents could prove how he left. Leah could tell him why they stayed. Luke felt Sadie's leash slacken in his hand. The puppy lay down across Marcus's boots, tired by a room full of humans doing nothing she understood. Marcus rested one hand near her folded ear, but did not touch it. I stopped treatment, he said. 18 months after, mail piled up, I moved, then moved again. By the time your correction reached the part of the system connected to my case, I had made myself difficult to find. Leah opened the blue folder. Inside were 3 photographs and a single folded letter. She placed a photograph of the medical team beside the cups. Marcus stood at the center, younger, annoyed by the camera. Leah and the others leaned toward him anyway. I didn't come here to forgive you in one afternoon, she said. I didn't ask you to. Good, because I'm still angry, just not about the same thing. Marcus gave the smallest nod. Leah reached for the L cup. She turned it once between her hands, then pushed it across the table until it rested beside Marcus's full cup. You didn't leave us, she said, but neither of us came home. The truth did not give Marcus a full night's sleep. At 2:17 the morning after meeting Leah, he woke on the garage cot with both feet on the concrete and his coat already in his hands. For several seconds, the open strip beneath the roll-up door became a landing zone, and the heater's orange indicator became a distant signal lamp. He walked outside. This time, he kept the key. Tess found him at sunrise sitting beneath the market overhang with the key closed inside his fist. He had not packed the blanket or arranged the cups toward the road. When Dana arrived, Marcus told her exactly where he had gone and agreed to attend the neurological and trauma evaluation she had offered twice before. Agreement isn't recovery, he warned. Good, Dana said. I didn't bring a recovery form. The evaluation took place in a clinic room Marcus selected after seeing 3 others. It had 2 windows, a door with no automatic closer, and enough space for him to sit without anyone between him and the exit. Luke waited in the lobby with Sadie. Leah did not come, but she sent a message before the appointment. Tell him uncertainty is not the same as failure. Marcus read it once and put the phone face down. The clinicians did not offer a single cause for the years behind him. The old head injury, trauma symptoms, disrupted sleep, memory gaps, and long avoidance had braided together. His military record showed that he had been placed on restricted duties after the evacuation. He later surrendered his clinical privileges voluntarily when the gaps frightened him, entered treatment, then stopped attending 18 months later. Savings became motel rooms. Motel rooms became borrowed couches. Each enclosed place brought the field hospital closer until sleeping outdoors seemed less dangerous than waking beneath another ceiling. No one reduced that history to a diagnosis on a page. They built a plan around what Marcus could tolerate: outpatient appointments, a peer specialist, neurological follow-up, and housing he would inspect before accepting. Luke tried to write every date in his notebook. Marcus noticed. You can miss one, he said. Luke put the pen away. Which one? Mine. I wrote it down. It was the first appointment Marcus had claimed as his own. Sadie's stray hold ended the following week. The shelter had posted her photograph, checked lost pet reports, and received no claim. Luke returned to Millstone Veterinary Clinic, signed the adoption papers, and paid the licensing fee. The technician handed him a folder, thick enough to suggest Sadie had acquired a mortgage. Marcus waited outside beneath the awning. Luke gave him the original $10 receipt. You keep it, Marcus said. You wrote it. You followed it. Luke folded the paper and returned it to his breast pocket. Sadie stood between them, wearing a proper collar with Luke's number and a county tag. Her folded ear had finally risen, though it leaned slightly outward when she was tired. Officially yours, Marcus said. She has considered me staff since the first night. Sadie sat on Luke's boot and looked at Marcus. Poorly trained staff, Marcus said. Luke almost objected. Then Sadie stole the end of Marcus's scarf and ran 3 circles around them, proving the doctor correct. Housing required more patience. The first unit Dana showed Marcus had a narrow hallway and 1 small window. He lasted 40 seconds inside before walking out. The second had a heavy fire door that closed behind him with a hydraulic sigh. He handed back the key without entering the bedroom. The third was a ground-floor studio in a renovated veterans' residence near the community clinic. 2 broad windows faced a courtyard. The front door opened directly outside, and a second door led to a shared garden. Pets could visit. The ceiling was high enough that Marcus could look up without seeing the old ward lowering toward him. He stood in the empty room for 7 minutes. "I'll try one night," he said. One night became 3. On the 4th, Marcus slept in the garage again. Dana did not call it failure. On the 5th, he returned to the studio and placed the broken watch on the windowsill instead of wearing it. By the end of 6 weeks, the room had collected a coffee maker, 2 mismatched chairs, a folded blanket from Tess, and 1 framed photograph of the medical team. Marcus still kept the door open during visits. He still woke at 2:17 some nights. The difference was not the absence of the past. It was the presence of a place he had chosen to return to afterward. Leah visited twice before they spoke about the memorial. Their conversations remained careful. Some ended after 10 minutes. Once, she left angry when Marcus apologized for a decision they had already established was shared. The next morning, she sent a message telling him why. He answered instead of disappearing. They chose a quiet winter afternoon and invited no reporters, commanders, or audience. Luke, Dana, and Tess attended. Earl, recovering through cardiac rehabilitation, sent a short note thanking Marcus for giving him time he had not expected. Dana read it privately before the service began. On a table beneath the team photograph, Leah placed a small wooden box. Inside rested 3 newly engraved brass tags: David Delaney, Raphael Soto, Simone Price. They were not replacements for anything the families carried. They were simply names made solid enough to touch. Marcus had brought 5 cups. He looked at them for a long time, then placed 3 beside the wooden box without filling them. The M and L cups remained near the coffee maker. The machine sputtered. A dark stream missed the center of the pot and struck the hot plate, releasing the bitter smell that once would have turned the room into another place. Marcus's shoulders tightened. Leah reached for the switch and turned it off. "Delaney," she said. Marcus breathed out. Still ruining the coffee. She poured what remained into the 2 cups and opened a paper packet of sugar over his. "I drink it black," Marcus said. "You drank it black because David kept stealing the sugar. That is an unverified allegation. I was recovery nurse. I documented everything." 1 white stream disappeared into the coffee. Marcus lifted the cup while it was still hot enough to steam. He tasted it before setting it down. 1 packet. The way Leah remembered. The sweetness reached him before the bitterness did. And for once, he did not wait for the drink to cool beside an empty chair. They said the 3 names aloud. Leah read a paragraph from the folded letter she had carried to their first meeting. Words Simone had written about the team turning bad food, short sleep, and impossible work into something that still felt like belonging. Marcus did not speak about heroism. He described David singing off-key, Raphael labeling every supply shelf twice, and Simone missing the same corner beneath her thumbnail during scrub. Nothing in the room repaired what had happened. The purpose was smaller and more honest. 3 people were remembered as lives, not as punishment. Marcus did not return to medical practice. His privileges had lapsed, and he no longer trusted himself with that responsibility. A supervised volunteer program at the community clinic offered different work. Twice a week, he helped veterans prepare medication lists, write questions for physicians, and understand which forms required answers before an appointment. He never examined anyone. He never introduced himself as their doctor. He was simply good at sitting beside people while paperwork tried to make them feel small. Luke began visiting on Thursday evenings. At first, he arrived with groceries, maintenance tools, and a mental list of problems. Marcus accepted the groceries, borrowed 1 screwdriver, and refused the rest. Eventually, Luke learned to leave the notebook in his truck. His own apartment changed without a meeting or a plan. Sadie's crate remained beside the kitchen, instead of being moved to the least visible corner. A basket of toys replaced the empty space beneath the table. Luke began cooking enough food that leftovers required labels, partly because Marcus came on Sundays, and partly because Leah occasionally drove over with photographs, or a question she claimed could not be handled by phone. The upstairs neighbor still moved impossible furniture, but Luke no longer listened to it alone. The $10 sign had been folded behind the adoption certificate. One evening, Luke framed neither item. He placed them together inside the drawer, where he kept documents that mattered and then left the drawer unlocked. The distinction would have seemed pointless to anyone else. To Luke, it meant Sadie was no longer a temporary responsibility waiting for completion. Marcus was not a case waiting for closure. There were now people who could interrupt his schedule without becoming a problem to solve. Sadie grew into her feet by slow degrees. She learned sit, down, leave it, and a highly selective version of come. She remained an ordinary young shepherd, curious, distractible, suspicious of vacuum cleaners, and convinced every loose shoelace belonged to her. When Marcus became quiet, she sometimes settled nearby because nearby people were where interesting things happened. When he needed space, Luke called her back. 8 weeks after the market, snow lay thin across the courtyard. Luke arrived in uniform after duty and found Marcus making coffee. Leah sat at the small table sorting photographs for copies to send the 3 families. The wooden box rested on the shelf beneath the team picture. Marcus poured 2 cups. He set one before Leah and kept the other. There were no empty cups facing the road. Luke stood inside the doorway without asking what needed to be fixed. Marcus nodded toward the second chair. Luke sat. Sadie circled once and lay between Luke's boots and Marcus's chair. Behind her, the front door remained open, not because anyone was preparing to escape, but because someone else might still need to know they could come in. Marcus spent years believing survival was evidence against him. Luke believed helping meant solving a problem before anyone could see what the problem stirred inside him. Leah carried anger because anger felt stronger than uncertainty. None of them changed through one perfect revelation. They changed when they finally allowed another person to hold part of the story. Marcus still woke at 2:17. Leah still had days when old questions returned. Luke still reached for his notebook whenever life became difficult to control. Healing did not erase those habits. It gave them somewhere safer to go afterward, a room with 2 windows, a cup of coffee shared while it was still warm, and a door that could remain open without meaning someone was about to leave. Sadie never understood flight manifests, military ranks, or why 5 empty cups faced the road. She did something simpler. She needed food on time. She needed patience when one ear would not stand straight. She tugged shoelaces, interrupted checklists, and settled near people who had forgotten how ordinary companionship felt. Sometimes love enters a life that way, not with answers, but with a small responsibility that keeps asking us to return to the present. If someone you know has grown quiet beneath grief, trauma, or shame, you do not have to repair their whole life today. Send one message. Sit beside them without forcing a confession. Help them find a door they can choose to walk through. And if you are the one carrying an old story alone, please remember that asking for help does not dishonor the people you miss. Maybe grace is not always the moment a burden disappears. Maybe it is the moment another pair of hands reaches for it. May God bless those still waiting for the last flight home, and those willing to leave a light on for them. If this story reminded you of someone who kept a place for others, share it with them. Tell us in the comments what small act once helped you feel that you belonged. And subscribe with the bell on for more stories about loyalty, courage, and the quiet ways people find their way home.